Greetings. On Wednesday, I made a post for Troll Jeff on anything in the Concerned Citizens group. I stated that we've done Ask, Debate, and Attack Jeff on anything, offer anything in the township, philosophy, religion, history, politics, economics, etc. I'll shoot a video agreeing with, refuting, or answering it. It's Sunday now, so that's a decently long period of time for people to post whatever they would like on there. And usually it comes fairly quickly if it's going to come. And obviously, like I'd mentioned in there before, I've done the public meetings where I did Ask Jeff anything, Debate Jeff on anything, Attack Jeff on anything. And in each of those, they weren't very popular as far as people showing up, but they were pretty popular with people criticizing through the comments. And I thought that would be a good way to address things. Not very many comments on this one, so which is kind of ironic because that's what people seem to want to do before, and that's why I was doing this, because I thought it might have more interest, more interaction. But nevertheless, so Renee said we need to get you a girlfriend friend, and then Kevin had replied that he might debate that. And so it's a little outside of the normal range. And then Renee replied with a GIF or GIF, whichever way it's supposed to be, with a dog saying yes, apparently. And so this has been brought up before. You can make the case that it impacts the township too, and I definitely had etc. in there, so I'll go into anything. It's and on this, it's something I've debated, and so it's a specific issue, being in office, but then it's a larger life issue as well. And so one, I've had people try to blackmail me, bribe me, and threaten to kill me. Right? You got the normal political range of stuff. And so to be expected, I'm surprised by the number of people that come into office and then expect to not have those types of things, but nevertheless. And when I was running for office, I was dating a woman that was going through a divorce, and it came up, and it was through a Facebook thing. I can't remember if it was a message just to me or if it was a Facebook message that had other people in it as well. I think it was that way, and a woman disagreeing about something, unwilling to have the talk, unwilling to have the conversation, unwilling to have the debate, as humans generally tend to be. So they either want you to agree with them or violent, right? There just is this huge tendency of not being in between with humans, which is a horrible tendency, right? It's the inhumanity of man, but nevertheless. And so she said, I know something about you. I'm like, great. Not a big deal. I've written hundreds of articles. You can know almost everything that I think on a wide range of subjects. Well, there's quite a bit more because I've probably 300 to 400 notes for other articles and then a bunch of other stuff, I think. But nevertheless, you can learn a lot about me very easy. I have all my stuff set to public, right? On purpose. I have my medical images posted on my website. I have a lot of stuff out there. And so I was like, go ahead, say it. And she was like, I don't think you want me to say it. I was like, go ahead. And she said, you're an adulterer. I'm like, yeah, I'm dating a woman that's going through a divorce. That's pretty straightforward. Depends on which definitions you go by. If you go by New Testament definitions, then everyone is. So welcome to it. And so then it just goes away. And I don't know exactly what she wanted me to do or not say or whatever it was. People try to get things over you to manipulate you in those various ways. And so part of that discussion at that time was nervousness about this. And I've had a few talks with women over the last couple of years and being nervous about that, right? Because people are going to attack me in whatever way they find a weakness or wherever they think there is a weakness. And so a girlfriend or a significant other is obviously an easy place to do that. So you need someone that's going to be able to take that. And then I have weird philosophies about transparency, things like those. And so that's difficult as well. All right, so there's all of those concerns with being in office, and I decided when I was coming into office that relationship fell apart. I've had a number of different relationships over quite a long while, and I decided to just I've debated being in the world or kind of withdrawn from the world, just focused on reading, writing, meditating, or really being in the world. With running for office, I'm obviously making that decision, right? It's a very important life decision for me personally. And so I'm deciding to be in the world. And I hadn't gone through academia. I figured, hey, I'm going to be in the world. There's major things that I disagree with universities and academia about in general, and specifically in a bunch of places. So I hadn't gone through academia, I hadn't collected degrees, which stops you from affecting academia, really, or affecting is how they would say it, but I would disagree with them. Nevertheless, I decided to collect those as well. Right, so I'm going into those, so throwing myself into this job. I was hoping for the first 6 months this would really eat up all my time, and then that grew to 12. I was able to get it down a bit after that, but it was still pretty intense through about 18 months, and it's going to be there, right? It's a Sunday. I'm here. I'm going to be here multiple times today. I was here multiple times yesterday because I'm trying to get the video of the ballots, and it downloads weird because of the formatting, because it has to go to what's called a FAT32 formatting on a USB, so that I can then get it to an exFAT formatting on a external hard drive, right? And so these problems have to be solved and worked out, and ideally I could do it in less time, but sometimes things take time. And so, being there is certainly a thing. And so there's all those logistical issues. Plus, I'm poor, right? And I live with my mother. And then once I'm in office, you're a bit stuck. You can't move outside of the township, right? I couldn't move across the street. I'd be in Cedar Creek. So you have to be careful with that. Otherwise, you'd be holding office illegally, which I've seen people do. I've seen elected officials claim that they're living somewhere that they're not an elected official, which would be illegal. And so don't want to play with that. So a little bit there. I have all my health issues, right? And that really expands into the more general problems. And I've been debating philosophy online in a pretty intense way since I was 12. So for a long time, old school message boards. But a number of years ago now, I debated with a guy in New Zealand, Mark. And so we call each other at the antipodes, right? At the opposite sides of the world. And he has a kid, and I was debating whether I should have kids. So, because I got a girl pregnant in my early 20s twice. She miscarried twice, right? The first time is why we moved back to Michigan from Texas, be closer to family, that type of thing. Neither of us knew how to handle it emotionally and then with each other. The second time she got pregnant, the first time was an accident, the second time was on purpose. And so I wanted to make that a more positive experience, started looking through names and that type of stuff, which means when the second miscarriage happened, it was more intense, and we really hadn't dealt with the emotional issues because we didn't know how from the first one. And then that relationship shattered into 1,000 pieces, which I did not realize right away, but it had, and then there was interesting stuff because she stuck around for a little bit for financial reasons, but nevertheless, we parted. And then learning years later, about my spinal deformities, my complications with health in Africa, which I've only had one major health collapse while I've been in office over the last 2 years. I've tried to be really careful with that. When I've gone to fire trainings, which I've gone to a lot, I could take the opportunity to jump in and do a few things, and I have. I did the knot tying competition the one time, and my team won. So, and that was a lot of fun, but I would like to do the more physical stuff. I like doing physical stuff. That's why I've wrestled alligators and jumped out of planes and done scuba diving and mountain climbing and whitewater rafting and running with bulls, all this different stuff, because I like it. But I'm much more limited now, and I'm getting better. Still, it's been years, but I'm still getting better. The spine's more stable. I just had a bit of an issue a couple of days ago where I tried to do more joint mobility through my neck and went a little too far with it. It wasn't very far, but nevertheless, it was too far. And the one major health collapse I had here, there were issues going on like there always are, but because it damages my brain stem, I was having a hard time, my body was having a hard time figuring out the difference between swallowing and breathing, right? So I was having some difficulties breathing and stuff, and I wasn't doing very well. We had some major incidents. I had several meetings over them, but I was like, all right, like I had to go. I had arranged for the other meetings, very important, to be moved to Monday, and then when I left, within a few hours, the whole thing fell apart. So any weakness is this disaster, seems like, something fills in there. It's like a power vacuum or something. And so I've been very careful with that. But this gets into, I have a lowered life expectancy. Like if you just look at the stats, right? Klippel-Feil syndrome through deformities in the cervical spine that cause damage to the brainstem. And so I would like to outlast everyone, really set a performance standard there. I've seen x-rays of a male, the women live longer. I've seen x-rays of a male that made it into, I believe it was 68, very similar deformities to mine. So if I can hit 70, that's longer than anyone that I know of with similar deformities. So the C1 is like a wafer partially fused to the skull, the bottom of the skull formed incorrectly. C2 and C3 fused in the back, and the odontoid in the front retroflex with a kinked brainstem. Those are the basic issues up there. I've got so I have partial cervical ribs and then an extra lumbar vertebrae as well. Those aren't too big of a deal. And so I have that, right? And then you also have the idea that this could be something that gets passed on through the genes. And so there's a realistic possibility, and if you look at the bell curve on the life expectancy, everyone with these, usually for males, usually dies between 35 and 45, right? The great majority is like 80%, something like that. And so it's not an unrealistic possibility, since I'm 33, a few months, be 34, getting right into that time frame, that I would get married, have a kid, the kid would have spinal deformities, and then I would die, which puts me in a moral pickle, because that would be wrong to do to someone. And so, but it's very possible that the kid wouldn't have spinal deformities, and then I could, maybe live in my 60s or maybe hit 70. Maybe that's a record. And so it's hard to judge that, right? And so it's a bit of a bigger issue as well. And then if you're not certain on where you are on that, and then you have my other oddities on all my various political beliefs, my religious beliefs, which don't fit in with anyone's, because I see all the religions is wrong in some way. And you get all that. It's quite difficult. And so I don't think it would be very difficult for me to end up with a girlfriend, but I think it would be quite difficult for me to get connected with someone that is probably going to work over the long term, especially because when I leave office here, right, in a couple of years, I know a lot of people have talked to me about staying in office, but I said I was going to be one term. I'll write an article on it. Eventually, I wanted to wait until after the midterms here. I have a couple of different directories to go, and I don't plan on running for state rep either. I might go over the reasons for that, but it's just a lack of the ability to probably make an impact there within a reasonable amount of time. I figure 6 years probably at a minimum to actually make a change. And so with something like that, I then am working on starting a meditation instruction company, and I'll be slowly working on that over the next couple of years, because it's not the biggest priority, but it'll ramp up near the end of my term. And then the degrees I'm collecting, right? So I'm doing a bachelor's degree in philosophy, a master's degree in public policy, got a special exemption to do them both at the same time, reading and writing, right? I like that stuff, and I'm pretty good at it. Decent enough that I can go at this very accelerated pace. And so I probably will apply to a PhD program, but PhD programs probably in England, because I like their academic system quite a bit better. And that means that if I get one of those with a full ride and a stipend, probably go over there for 2-3 years to do that. And probably I would like to do a project on the history of freedom, the idea of individual rights in the modern term. So essentially from the Charter of Liberties in 1100 right up through now. With 5 major documents along the way. But nevertheless, so it could could go in that direction, could go in this direction of really being focused on the meditation instruction company. And so with those different possibilities and some of the uncertainty, it's hard to really tell someone like, jump on board and then hang on, because I'm gonna make some definite decisions at some point, but it could go in these different directions and be on these different things. So a decent amount of complexity there. Something I've thought about, something I've debated. So Albert Camus, the French philosopher, looks like Albert Camus, right? I like his stuff. I like some of his stuff. He's founder of absurdism, a branch of existentialism, although he wouldn't have said that. And he said the most important question in philosophy is life worth living? I wrote a 4-article series on this one time and came to the conclusion that a better question, that's what I was trying to do, come up with a better question, is what makes life worth living, right? And so that has the built-in assumption that there is inherent meaning in life, right? So work of Viktor Frankl definitely influencing that. But then the next step to that would be, is life worth creating, right? And that becomes this, this is a very important question. And so that was my debates with Mark in New Zealand. And, he had a kid, and I think there might have been some developmental issues. And so we went back and forth on that in a variety of fashions, for my personal decision. And this was a number of years ago. My health was much worse then. It was not obvious that I would necessarily improve. So for me, it was a much stronger point. Obviously, it made sense probably to say no at that time. Now it might make sense to say yes, but still there's various logistical difficulties. And that was the biggest thing on there. So the next one is by Star. You are doing a great job, Jeffrey. 0 complaints in the last 2 days shows that I'm right. And that was 18 hours ago. So that's why it says 2 days on there. And I thought about doing something like Jeff reviews 2 years of Jeff, right? Something like that. And it's difficult to review yourself, especially in any kind of objective way. Doesn't mean anyone else's view of you is correct either. But I think it's good to try to get the feedback loops, right? I cover that in the one article I wrote for the Beacon. It's on my website as well, How Power Corrupts. And it's basically through 2 mechanisms. One is self-selection bias, and the other one is bad feedback loops. And so I try to encourage criticism, and then I have to judge it, right? So thinking is basically imagining, coming up with alternatives, and then judging, where we're rating something as good, bad, true, false, that type of thing, and then finally deciding, where we're eliminating alternatives and doing one thing. This is the process of thinking. Almost no one understands. Everyone does it to some extent, right? And even grass, right? I wrote about that in my last article. It has to judge, and because judgment is necessary for life, or the sustainment of life at least. And Musk talks about this, like encouraging feedback from people that you respect, appreciate their opinion, and see what the criticisms are. And I've tried to do that. That's part of my transparency. I've set out psychological analysis to, I think, maybe a couple of dozen people that I know several years ago, so that they could rate me on different stuff, so I could try to gain a more objective view on myself, along with taking dozens of psychological tests to see where I was on stuff, what my inherent personality was, and then how to attempt to work with that. So it's the same type of thing. All of these, the 3 meetings I had, and the encouraging, not minding criticism, thinking some of it is a waste of time and whatnot, but some of it is useful and good, and all of it I think is good to address. And if a government starts repressing or oppressing or trying to shut down speech that is critical of it, then there is no way out of that loop, right? That's a positive feedback loop, and so it's just going to go downhill. Truman, President Truman has a great quote on that. I can't remember exactly offhand, but that is the central idea. And so I think that's very important. And so my basic point on all that is it's hard for me to judge. I have many criticisms of myself in the office, and so in personal life, obviously. And it's hard to get a handle on some of that and then work within your locus of control, right? What do you actually have power to do? What do you not have power to do? What can you do? And then do it. And so I've been working on that and trying to keep things, like I've talked about in tyranny, my article, Tyranny and Anarchy, right? This huge swinging and stuff. You don't want that huge swinging through the political spectrum. It doesn't work out. If you're trying to gain individual liberties, it just doesn't work out in that way, almost ever. And so there's not a good historical precedent for let's shake stuff up and hopefully it comes out great. It's more like what is the nail that you can hit on the head that will make a difference in this case? And that's why I'm working on some of the specific things that I am. And I'm trying to make a decent progress on those over a decent period of time, at a pace. A lot of people have said my pace is very aggressive. And, I'd move in an organization where there weren't the checks and balances, I would move at a pace probably at least 4 times this fast. And so, but I know how government works, and so that you have to work at this pace that a lot of people, like in business, you'd find extremely frustrating, and the business wouldn't be able to change fast enough, and it would go broke, and then it would cease to exist. But in general, governments don't have that negative feedback mechanism, that ability to fail and then go non-existent. They fail, and then they continue to exist. And sometimes they fail and go away completely, but you don't want to live through that period. And so this bad feedback system is really something to keep in mind. I don't think almost anyone does on any side. I think both the parties are not very good, obviously. I think everyone probably knows my opinions on those various things through articles and videos and those types of things. And so that's all I have. So I'll post this as Troll Jeff on anything. And, obviously, I don't want to make it obvious. I've had phone calls with people who have been very critical of the township and have shown up to meetings and have written me stuff. I have tons of emails with them. And they, over time talking with them, the one guy, he was saying, this was different Kevin than is on here, he was saying it was ridiculous how I post that I'll debate anything about the township, philosophy, religion, history, politics, economics, etc. And arrogant. And I try to be conscious, very conscious of arrogance, because it's a very self-defeating type of thing. But I think it's important to be able to have the discussion. And I've had too much time spent discussing things with him. But he came to the conclusion that I do know a decent amount, and he appreciated that I was willing to talk with him about it, and either convert the other one to a different view, or show where they were wrong and get them to change their mind or start thinking about it more, at least, or at least find out where we disagree, and then and see if we can move on under a framework of agreement with disagreements inside of it, right? That's a good way to work with it. And so I think these are important. But now I'm over halfway, and we're 2 years in, 2 years to go. And so it's very important up front for me to do like the trainings, right? I did 3 certifications in zoning, 1 in tax assessing, went to MTA trainings, that type of thing. Very important. I've held up to now 4 of these 3 public meetings, and then this one where I just try to do the Facebook thing where people just criticize me on anything, and I'll address it. At least have the discussion. I think I've shown that I was even willing to go into personal things, but any range, right? Any range that you want to work on, I can. And even had the one conversation recently on video with Al, and that was very good. I'm hoping more people want to do something like that. And that's, I think, very important to get into that first part of being in office. That's where you should tackle a lot of that stuff, because now you're going to be looking at it's a different set. It makes less sense. I'll probably still do some certifications. I'll look at useful certifications. I'm a big supporter of training and education. Right, we increased all the education budgets since when I got in office, and then I'm not sure I've denied anyone at any point for an educational thing. Although I've been wary of some logistical issues. Right, I ideally like one of the office holders or one of the deputies in the office all the time, and so arranging that can be difficult if there's a training where both of them could go to. But still, we've done that to some extent, and then had both people in one office outside of the office for training at a time. Nevertheless, I'm a big supporter of it, so I'll probably still do some sort of certifications or training over the next 2 years, but it makes much more sense to front load that. Same thing with the feedback, right? The negative feedback loops, the criticisms. It's more important to front load that, and so the adjustments can be made there, and hopefully keep things more on track. Whereas if you get way off the rails, then it's very hard to correct that. And that's why I have the meetings, one-on-one sessions, and small group sessions, and staff meetings and stuff like that, where like the one-on-ones, I mean, for that first year at least, I think maybe a little bit longer, it was purely like, what do you think is going well? What do you think is going poorly? What do you think I'm doing well? What do you think I'm doing poorly? And so that I could course correct, and try to nip any deficiencies as far as I could in the bud, and before they flowered into something larger. And so that's the idea there. And obviously there's no way, right, that you can get 9,427 people. That's the last census, the number of people in Dalton Township, on the same page. And so there's going to be people that probably love me, some that like me, some that don't care, some that have no idea that I exist, some that slightly dislike me, some that dislike me pretty strongly, and then some that hate me. All right, and those are the blackmailers and well, I guess the bribers could be anywhere along there, and then the people that threaten to kill me and whatnot. And so there's no way to eliminate the whole spectrum being possible. But I think if you act decently, and try to be sincere, I think sincerity is a huge part of it, and try to see the other side, and at least try to be understanding, even if you disagree with someone, and then be sincere in all those interactions. That helps. It's difficult because humans like sarcasm. I was certainly heavy into sarcasm when I was younger. I've tried to move away from it to the extent that I can, but it is a little bit of a struggle because it's kind of naturally comes up sometimes. But essentially slide this scale in the one direction where more people are thinking at least you're acting decently, getting some positive things accomplished and done. So that's the idea at least, and I'll keep working on those for another 2 years, obviously. But if anyone has anything on anything, obviously, my direct line at the office is area code 231-332-6700, or email supervisor@daltontownship.org. If anyone disagrees on stuff, obviously there's a huge amount of disagreements. I would say probably an infinite amount, technically, because I doubt there's anything once you get down to the specifics that I exactly agree with anyone on. But if anyone would like to do one of the conversations, the videos, come in. We'll put it on YouTube. I think the conversations are good to have, the dialogue. I don't mind monologue, which is what I do when I put out the articles. But I think dialogue is very useful as well. So, or if you don't want to have one of those conversations, but you just have some sort of criticism, or if you have something positive, feel free to reach out as well. Otherwise, this is Jeff Martin signing off until the next thing that I do. Bye.